Hello, everyone. So first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to my fellow speakers. Can we give a round of applause to everyone that's gone on so far? Everyone's going to go on tomorrow. It's been really super inspiring and also validating, but they put things into better words than I could have. So thank you for that. Also, I want to thank the organizers, the venue staff, everyone who's in here, everyone who's on the live stream. Thank you. Great. It's very nice to be here in Toronto. As Ishan said, I've not spoken in 4 years. I'll talk a little bit about that. I love Toronto. It's one of my favorite places to visit. You're in the correct time zone. Like New Jersey, where I come from, I live in Jersey City, which is a cool little peninsula across the Hudson River from the World Trade Center. Another cool thing is between Toronto and New Jersey is we both have a medieval times. Here I am at yours several years ago. It's my pal Gianni and your king. Toronto has a king, right? Like, we paid a lot of money to take a photo with your king. So as Ishan mentioned, I'm here to give my take on the future of computing, which feels like none of my damn business. I've never really had like the drive to predict or plan for the future. So this is all very much like out of my comfort zone, but I'm trying to like get back to my old hobbies after the last few years. And one of those hobbies is not minding my damn business. So it's also not really too much of a stretch for me to lecture on this topic. I started my computing studies almost exactly 20 years ago. I entered the industry almost 10 years ago. I've, without the use of LLMs, accidentally convinced an uncomfortable number of JavaScript developers that I coined the phrase "life is a highway." And I am also pretty confident I could have gotten away with Theranos. So I embody the present of computing. And the present, if you think about it, is just the future of the past. Also, who is even good at predicting the future? You know, when Elizabeth Holmes' like fraud came to light, I think a lot of us thought like, well, lesson learned, no one's ever gonna pull such a wild scam in the tech industry ever again. But we keep being wrong. History keeps repeating itself, and not even in like new, exciting, evolved ways. So considering that, and also thinking about how like trend cycles work in art and fashion, technically all I really need to do to predict the future is to take the past and repeat it. And that's my methodology today. Unfortunately, history has always been my worst subject in high school, college. But to be fair, I mean, like the history they were teaching was like incorrect and whitewashed and painfully boring. And fortunately, now we have AI. But I didn't use AI for this talk, not because I believe in some kind of like purity of doing hard, tedious, bespoke work, because like working kind of sucks, unless you're my coworkers or manager who's watching the live stream right now. I love working. My favorite. The reason why I didn't use AI was because ChatGPT doesn't even know Elon Musk bought Twitter, so it was really helpful in what I'm just trying to do. So what I ended up doing was logging events from every year over the last 2 decades from onthisday.com, which is absolutely riddled with ads. Like, no exaggeration. Every year I downloaded over a dozen megabytes of ads that were mostly for Hidden Valley Ranch dressing, which I don't eat. I'm plant-based. Those ads kept refreshing, so that number of megabytes kept going up and up the longer I took to go through the page. And it was lazy loading, so every year was like a 15-minute process. I popped all of those historical moments into a spreadsheet, the True Gentle Person software, and I did a select all and drag fill, which in theory should have not only incremented the year's headers, but it also should have just predicted the future, right? It seems like something AI should be able to do, but Google Sheets just repeated the last 20 years to the next 20, which started the Iraqi war, and it relaunched Facebook, and I did not want to do either of those things. Again, you think that with all the data in the world, Google would have implemented that feature. Maybe Web3 can fix this. So on the rare occasion that spreadsheets fail me, I turn to WikiHow. This is the website that knows WikiHow to do everything, allegedly. It suggested I consult an oracle. I might have chosen the wrong one. Because in response to what's the future of computing, their result dates back to 2008, where their prediction was that cloud computing wouldn't kill relational databases or render most of the DBA jobs obsolete. And they were right, but that wasn't really exactly what I was looking for. It turns out you can't always have machines do all the work for you all of the time, so I leaned in Sheryl Sandberg style into that purity of doing hard, tedious, bespoke work that I was avoiding. And so what I'm going to do now is drag all of you gently along with me through that work. We're going to skim through the last 20 years of history and go over what I see from the next 20 years, given how bad we've been and not repeating the bad parts. By the way, hello. My name is Jenn Schiffer. I'm the Director of Community at Fastly, and I've been managing the friendliest community of coders building the web using glitch.com for over 6 years now. Not unlike Google Sheets, I do not have an innate paranormal ability to predict the future of computing, but I am a classically trained computer scientist with no fewer than 500 megabytes of ad tracking cookies downloading onto my machine, so let's rock. So we're going to start with 2003 to 2007. The NASDAQ composite at this point was climbing out of its low from that dot-com bubble burst. The computing industry started to see a lot of disruption and growth rebuilding over those next 5 years. And I saw a lot of disruption and growth personally. I had started college to study computer science against a lot of odds. At that point, I had spent the latter half of my high school senior year sleeping at motels, crashing on friends' couches. I worked many weird jobs. I was peeling a lot of frozen shrimp at an Outback steakhouse. I was disassembling blood surgical kits for a biomedical company, selling used books. I was doing a lot of weird stuff to get by, and I was one of the few women in my computer science class and really didn't have a support system. And at times I didn't really even have a home. So things were really fucking hard, but what was going on in the tech industry during these years at that time made me feel really hopeful that all that hard work that I was doing and surviving through was a worthy investment. And I was kind of right. During these years, there was explosive growth in both software and hardware that enabled the things that I loved most about using computers, which was socializing, collaboration, entertainment, creating art. During this time, B2 was forked to create WordPress, which really got me more into building for the web for fun, while my studies had me trapped in the Java virtual machine. Social media platforms like Facebook and MySpace connected me to my peers in a time that I really needed it the most. And the cloud was becoming interesting and accessible to developers with AWS launching S3 and EC2, as well as other hosting and web building services coming out, which were more sophisticated and work friendly than GeoCities that a lot of folks my age at the time had kind of grown up with. And while I imagine that many of you would think that the most impactful invention during this block of time was the iPhone, I think my fellow Galaxy brains in the room would say that the true gift that tech gave to us was Yahoo Pipes. Shouts out. So for those of you not familiar, Yahoo Pipes, I think, was a timeless example of how powerful and interactive web-based interfaces could be, even back then in the early 2000s. It let you visually mash up data across websites and services, which is really super helpful at the time when all these new content platforms were coming out. I'm only half trolling, and that's generous, when I say that Yahoo Pipes walked so the decentralized web could run. And that takes me to my prediction, which is that the cloud, as this big corporate-owned monolith, is going to dissipate into tiny little baby clouds run by communities and normal people. So several months ago, the creator of Rails, DHH, he blogged about moving his company off of the cloud and onto their own servers. Like, I guess the cloud wouldn't stop talking about human rights at work. And not that I like to give any validating attention to Mr. David Hamburger Helper when he does these like, I'm the underdog, big companies are bad performances. There's a reason why companies and people flocked to renting computers, because his thing is like, it's so expensive. Why did we do this? The reason why we did that is because many of us are not able to run our own servers to even begin with. So like, congrats to the rich who can, you know, buy their own data centers today. Like, it is cheaper. And also like owning a home over renting a place, owning servers to run your web apps over renting computers is a great investment. Like, buying the hardware now, it's expected to kind of be a cash cow for those who are able to do that. So we're going to see that a lot more. But again, it's like not accessible to most people. So we have to like work towards popularizing like local hosting, community governed mesh networks. I want to give a shout out to Mob's talk at this event about local first software, the Agrigore browser. It's an absolute must watch. If you didn't catch it, or if you're watching the video in the future, check it out. I get shy at Q&A parts of talks because I like end up on stage and I get to talk so much. So a question I wanted to raise my hand about, Mob, if you're here, is more like a challenge I think we all face, is like, how can we make mesh networks interesting and convenient enough for non-technical users? Like, there's got to be some essential app, but also with onboarding that's not just easy, but like actually delightful. I think like what I've been watching over the past couple of days is I've been on Mastodon for a while, and Michael's right, I don't tweet anymore. But I'm seeing a lot of people getting invites to Blue Sky, and I'm seeing people who are non-technical, like the shit posters that I also follow on Twitter, moving to Blue Skies. And I fear that the community there is going to become just Twitter 2.0, like the bad practices and relationships and the way that we are not really nice to each other ourselves on there are going to keep happening there, but everyone's joining because it's a much more delightful experience to onboard than it was to Mastodon. So I don't really have like a solution to that, but it's like a challenge I want to put out to everyone in here that is advocating for and building these solutions. It's really important, but we have to make onboarding like really delightful, not just easy, delightful. I think a lot about like the WordPress model, where if you want the convenience of not hosting, you can use WordPress.com and you pay and they host and whatever. But if you want to run it yourself, you can download from WordPress.org, and you still get like a pretty good community guided experience. And then like other hosting companies will have that delightful one-click install. So you can like blog on the cloud, or you can blog for your own server. So I just want to kind of like put that out into the world and manifest it. But we have to move towards that community run software. So yeah, you can blog on the cloud, or you can blog your own server, but then like, what about all the other kinds of content creation that saw its rise in the past 20 years, like the launches of YouTube and Facebook? I think that decentralization of content creation, and I'm going to talk about content creators a lot here. Every single one of us in this room is probably a content creator. Like, I think we sometimes think of like influencers, which, you know, me being on stage here talking to you, I am an influencer. If you were out in the lobby as an attendee and you have a lanyard on your neck that says that you can take photos, you are a content creator. So all of this applies to all of you. Decentralization of content creation is definitely going to be a core theme of innovation over the next 2 decades, just like how centralization of content creation was a core theme over the last 2. We've seen this begin already over the past several years, like with the, huge wave of people getting into the Fediverse in response to our favorite space idiot pushing the limits of Twitter's awful and what that can mean. We're already seeing multiple protocols being created, like the App Protocol, Blue Sky, ActivityPub, which has been around. And I think it's good that we have multiple protocols. Like, I don't think that there should be one winner. And the last 20 years have kind of brainwashed us into there has to be a one winner mindset. Like, you will see me on Blue Sky, you will see me on my Mastodon instance. We can create solutions to connect those multiple protocols. And we can call it Yahoo Pipes because that name is available. So while the 5 previous years gave us the power to post, it also innovated systems of locking us, the posters, into centralized platforms. Boo. These platforms paved the way to like exploitative creator and gig economies becoming the norm. Instead of like kind of starting with hope, this block of time started with the Great Recession, which is the perfect time for me to graduate from college. I had such a hard time finding a job in the tech industry that I just went back to grad school to continue my comp sci studies. And then I became a department administrator and an adjunct because, let's just say, I think a lot of people in this room know that like grad school is not really the most lucrative career. And during that time, I learned JavaScript and even brought it into our curriculum. So it was a big thing for me. Despite like the recession and also the New Jersey Nets moving to Brooklyn, which I only call out because it's really unfair that y'all have an NBA team and New Jersey doesn't. There were exciting things happening in tech. Apple launched the App Store, which is like hands down like one of the most important launches for all of us in this room, whether we like it or not. And with that came the innovation in developer experience that exploded too. We saw the creation of Stack Overflow, GitHub, Node.js bringing JavaScript to the server, whether we liked it or not. The App Store also brought new economic opportunities to the streets with rideshare and hosting like Airbnb and Uber, more online paying options and point-of-sale tools like Square, Venmo, Stripe. There's hair in my mouth. These things like enabled small businesses to get a piece of the online revenue action, which is very exciting at the time. Of course, in hindsight, as you can tell as I name these names, we were diving headfirst into the corporate innovation to exploitation funnel that we're kind of like spinning our heads around about today. And of course, so much innovation, sacrifices had to be made. So I want you to allow me a moment to be dramatic and say that the end of Google Wave was a huge gut punch to me. Google Wave is to thank for all in-browser collaborative experiences, not just with Google Docs, but any in-browser IDE you might be using today, especially Glitch, through the research on operational transforms. But also Google Wave, personally, its sundown that like to me came out of nowhere was my wake-up call that I needed to be extremely careful about what platforms I became dependent on. It was like a foreshadowing, if you will. So decentralization of content is not going to be enough. I'm hoping that content creators, again, all of you in this room count towards that, will not only follow in the footsteps of gig workers today demanding rights and what they are owed, but join them and blue-collar unions and retail and food service workers who are already fighting for fair wages and benefits. Everyone may not be ready to run their own mesh network today, but in the meantime, there needs to be collective action to set the boundaries to prepare for that and new expectations that are in place so our content is protected while we work towards more community governance. Like, I wish we could flip a switch and be like corporation to community, but that's not going to happen. So we have to kind of think about like the process that gets us there. If we don't think about that and if we don't enable that to happen, we're just going to be harmfully fracturing the web in a way that to fix it, we'll just end up centralizing it all over again. This is like kind of my worry about all the non-technical people from Twitter all going to just like one other platform. Like I worry that it will fracture all of our conversations, all of our community, and then they'll end up in one place and be unsatisfied and not delighted, and then allow someone to come in and swoop in and centralize it all over again. which will unravel all of the amazing work that all of my colleagues that have spoken at this event are doing. And also the consequences will be more dire than we see today, because as we go through this timeline, it starts hopeful and then ends up in the bad times. It's hard to imagine what can be worse than like Elon destroying years of work by killing access to the Twitter API for something that is a little bit more recent. I think it's situations like the Twitter API thing that make it, I don't know, it's so interesting to me that community is becoming a refrain for more and more companies. I'm speaking with both my director of community at a tech company hat, as well as my non-work community organizer pants on. Tech companies are investing in creating their own communities, and I think that anything that gives community a voice is great, especially since I think that these companies' APIs for community-generated content, including Twitter's and all the other social media platforms, I think that they should be owned by the community. For many reasons, including the fact that we can't expect companies like Twitter not to take access away to make more revenue. And what they're taking the access away of is the content that we've created, our conversations, our knowledge sharing. I want to call out lightly that Reddit and Stack Overflow right now are starting to charge large AI companies for API access. And I'm assuming it's to get ahead of all of their data being scraped, which it's done been scraped, with no benefit to their communities or their bottom line. And I hope that doesn't devolve into charging the creators of the content on their platforms, the members of their community. But that's probably where we're headed if we let them, by not protesting that path. I think it's great for the tech industry to really invest in community. And not just because community is in my title and has been for 6 years. I chose to pivot into that space from consulting and web development because I experienced the importance of it firsthand growing up on the internet. And I've also seen companies fuck it up. And I'm like, well, if I kind of go into it and can kind of vocalize that you can make good change and not lock people into your systems, then that's the job I want to do. That's the legacy I want to leave. Also with the pandemic and the looming recession and massive layoffs at the hands of content platforms, we need community more than ever. But also, again, I've been working in the community minds for quite a while, and I know that when something becomes table stakes, as community is, this is when the snake oil salesmen come out of the woodwork about it. So I want everyone, content creators and community people alike, to keep an eye out for growth hacks acting like community. I kind of think of how flash mobs, remember flash mobs were a thing? Flash mobs are often not just goofy fun parties, but they're marketing stunts. So I just want people to be cautious of thought leaders who try to make community out like it's some kind of rocket science. Not because I think they're particularly dangerous, I just think they're annoying and I don't want to be associated with them. But I want us to, when we think about community owning, community governance, community sharing, these are not new novel things. We're relearning what the past has done. I think of how people used to share recipes with each other before there were computers. People told stories. We hear stories from before times we can even think of that have existed because there's stars in the sky that make cool shapes and they explain them. Community generated content and sharing and hosting has existed. What we're doing is we're again going back to that thinking after these decades of brainwashing and fighting against that. So I just want us to make sure that we don't try to over-engineer human relationships like we did single-page apps, for example. And if there are any community engineers in the room here or watching that work at tech companies like myself, I just want you to know that your most important job, no matter what your boss might tell you, is not locking your community members into your community infrastructure. It's helping them succeed with it because they consent to use it, because it's a delightful experience for them. And your job is also advocating for their ownership and governance of the content they're creating or hosting with it. And it's possible. We have a lot more work to do like at Glitch, but we actively decided not to create a new language or to lock you into our platform. We just let you build the web with open standards. You can export it, you can download it, you can take it wherever you want. We just hope that you hang around and share your knowledge and creativity with the rest of the community if you want to. And we're there to create the delightful experience to, hope that you do that. And again, we have a lot more work, but that work is what I'm actually surprisingly excited about for the future. Okay, where was I? So Google Wave died, causing the world to take a turn for the worse, especially politically in the United States. I was having a horrible time working at the university, so I quit academia to work at the NBA, which I couldn't convince them to keep the Brooklyn Nets in New Jersey. I ended up then leaving the NBA to work at a consulting company, which was probably my second biggest career regret next to the year in grad school where I was like, yeah, I'll teach Excel courses at 7 a.m. That's a vibe. It was also during this time that I not only entered the industry, but I also started to become visible in it. I gave my first conference talk ever at jQuery Portland about art and code. I will be talking a little bit about that at the social later tonight, so I hope to see you there. Around that time, my pal Nick that I worked with at the MBA and we started a satirical online magazine called CSS Perverts, powered by the then new and invite-only medium.com. Again, the exclusivity of the Blue Sky invites is giving me extreme medium.com vibes, in not a bad way, but it's always just kind of funny how exclusivity really does bring the hype. We humans have evolved, but not in that sense. So yeah, we were writing web development satire, which seems pretty niche, but there is a whole lot of things to write about satire satirically in the tech industry at that time. We had the JavaScript framework wars. Who else here was a veteran of the JavaScript framework wars? Yeah. The JavaScript community, company included, was so annoying that developer experience was evolving to make it possible to avoid it entirely. And we had the Equifax breach. So cybersecurity was finally becoming mainstream in a way that it probably should have decades ago. This is also when companies truly started to fuck with us in ways that no person, not even myself, can even imagine or come up with. I think that forcing U2's album on every iPod and a year later also deciding we just really don't need headphone jacks was maniacal of Apple. The shutdown of Yahoo Pipes, feral. And Amazon tried to insert its eyes and ears, disguised as the Internet of Things, into all of our private spaces, and you motherfuckers let them do it. But I'm hopeful that's going to change. I think in response to the convenience of smart devices and affordable hardware like the Raspberry Pi that had come several years before that, we're already seeing people create their own IoT options without giving Amazon and the cops that work with them free surveillance. And I love what Mauve had said during the Q&A yesterday in her talk of how if it's expensive, it's not worth it. Of course, that applies to hardware and software and everything. If you were in that talk and you heard someone annoyingly snapping, that was me the entire time. So yes. So democratization of hardware is really important good. I also want us to make sure that we are aware that privacy is something that everybody deserves, not just people who know how to build a camera or connect it to some network. We have to be aware of also who we're all pointing our cameras at. So be careful what we're actually contributing to. Is it the democratization of hardware, or is it the democratization of surveillance? I also want to give a shout out to the right of repair movement that's slowly making strides, which is really great. We just have to make sure that we not let the companies that provide that hardware and have to kind of allow us into it use subscription software as a way to lock us into their hardware if they can't physically lock us out of repairing it ourselves. That's something we have to keep an eye on, because legislation is being made, so we're getting closer to being able to have more access to repairing our devices. But corporations are always going to fight us on that. Also, I wasn't sure how I was going to fit this in here, but I think it's really important. We need to figure out the lithium-ion battery problem. Last year in New York City, there were 200 fires associated with lithium-ion batteries exploding, mostly due to the lack of access and affordability of legit batteries and the kind of gray and black market. 6 people had died, 150 were injured. That was last year. This is increasing this year at an exponential rate, as does the demand for food delivery, and it's often delivery bikes that run these. The scooters that we see, like the hotel I'm staying in, I saw 2 scooters inside. It got me a little nervous because I'm thinking a lot about that. I think that increasing access to anything, whether it's software or hardware, always increases abuse vectors and bugs. And hardware has that added problem of counterfeit batteries and parts that put all of us in danger. So I just felt like it would be irresponsible to talk about hardware and not call that out. They are trying to think of ways in New York City to alleviate that problem due to the large volume of that happening. It's important that we blame the providers of the hardware and the batteries, not the people who are consuming it, because again, we have to think about the rights of gig workers that have no other option. So yeah, I think just like overall, just paying attention to the hardware aspect of computing will lead to all of us, not just those who understand computing, to have options, choice, and autonomy when it comes to pairing convenience with privacy. And if we focus about the potential disasters like battery fires, it can also save lives. On the topics of option choice and autonomy, actually, in 2015, I wrote a satirical chapter about JavaScript and how it should and could be the only language. And for some reason, O'Reilly published it. At that time, I was becoming incredibly fatigued with the community. And not so much the speed I wish developer experience is evolving, but like the weird directions I thought it was taking. And satire has always been my tool for communicating what I want to see in the world. And I think we're starting to see it. And again, I love JavaScript, and being humbled doesn't have to be a bad thing. I just think there should be no one programming language of the web, and I think we are getting there thanks to the much needed innovation of WebAssembly and edge computing. I mean, we can keep making JavaScript frameworks and make JavaScript less like JavaScript, but it's still JavaScript, but harder to do. But I also think that instead, like the ability to run dynamic content on the edge sounds infinitely better from a developer experience, as well as an end user perspective. And I think that if the cloud couldn't kill relational databases and DBA jobs, I don't think WebAssembly and edge computing will kill JavaScript. So for all the JS folks out there, again, I'm in company with you. Humbling is not all that bad. Everyone hydrate for this one. Okay, so here we are at hell. Political hell, tech hell. It wasn't all bad. I started working at Fog Creek to launch a thing called Glitch. I got an IUD, which made me like a bionicle, technically, maybe. I gave my last conference talk before today at JSConf EU 2019, which I think marked the end of the new wave JavaScript era. I became a remote worker, like many of you probably because of COVID. Glitch became a startup, Glitch went through layoffs, Glitch got acquired by Fastly. And people have been asking me this, and so I just felt like this is a good opportunity to say it. That acquisition was a good thing. I know we carry a lot of valid trauma from seeing the tools that we like and the companies of the people that we like being acquired. I think that our acquisition enabled us to continue our mission and also work amongst really incredible smart people working on forward-thinking technology, like everyone's talking about at this event. All the things that like I'm hoping for, like the Fediverse, edge computing for the developer community, WebAssembly, and a community of creative people using code to express themselves. we're working on all of these things, which is really great. But it was a real slog to get to that point, and not just because all the bad things happening in our world creating such uncertainty. Like there were lots of doubts, lots of uncertainty. I became really sick and was in the throes of thyroid disease, and like all the stability that I felt like I had built from the bottom up was hanging in the balance. And that's like, again, I'm not trying to be dramatic. Like, I just want to call it like those last 5 years fucking sucked, and I think a lot of you would agree with me. So I wanted to just acknowledge that, like, this is hell. It's very hard to pull out any highlights from the last 5 years. And not just because it's not been enough time for me to process. This all feels like this has happened in the past couple of weeks. But like, there's just been so much absurdity, like violence, loss. Mark Zuckerberg trying to claim thought leadership over network connected virtual experiences and like literally not having 2 legs virtually to stand on as he did it. And then here's the part of like my talk that I've had the hardest time with. It's time to talk about artificial intelligence. So I was thinking a lot about the deletion of Yahoo Answers last week when I heard about BuzzFeed News shutting down, especially about how crowdsourced information and digital journalism fed a lot of the language models that are now being used to ultimately destroy them. And like, I know like that's capitalism, baby, or babby. But without community crowdsourced content and digital journalism, like what's going to further educate those models? Like, would it just start teaching itself and getting dumber? Like, that's like kind of something that I worry about. I think just like the cycles of innovation and hype that we see with virtual reality, the same will be true for AI. Like, it got hot. I think we're getting into a plateau right now, I think, a much needed one. And then it will get hot again. Hopefully not in worse ways, but probably. I think that also like VR, the community will make it better and fun, not Microsoft. And I'm hoping that creation and usage will get cheaper. Like the waves of innovation in VR, like the way that it brought us cool hardware, like portable headsets and motion detection, I'm hoping that AI innovation will like bring us closer to quantum computing. And like, I know that like a lot of people say that it's impractical, but we made crypto mining and Gary Vaynerchuk's NFT restaurant happen. So anything is possible. Also, like VR, I think, and this is like not like a good hopeful note, militarization will be what fuels innovation and corporate gains. I think this is where Elon got things wrong with Twitter Blue subscriptions. Like, military is where the money is at, not check marks or clout. I think a lot of people hopefully will realize that like clout is a fake currency created to distract us from our own exploitation. I think that's why it's so obvious that Elon is like, how do I put this in like he's just like out of his own league. And that's like why he acts so irrationally. Like, he has no idea what he doesn't know, but he thinks he knows everything. Anyway, I just like, I worry about the militarization be driven by what the community is creating, which goes back to what I was saying about the boundaries that we have to set and the resistance that we have to have, not just to corporations, but to the military, because the corporations are working with the military already, if you didn't know that already. This is a snippet from an open letter that Elon Musk signed calling for the pause of AI systems, which I think is just as irrational as the whole Twitter checkmark fiasco. It's very obvious that Elon's fear, and the fear of other people that signed this, like Andrew Yang and Steve Wozniak, their fear is not the riskiness of AI, it's their fear of missing out on money. There's a lot to catch up on. Really smart people have been studying and publishing and calling for action on the potential and current effects of AI usage for a very long time. And they're all being fired from the corporations that are rushing AI launches, like as we sit here. I think that if it were possible to pause an entire field of computing that has the momentum it has right now, we should use that energy instead to pause the actual biggest problem with AI, which is the people who hold power over it and ultimately benefit from it. I think that people like Elon want to pause AI because they didn't anticipate us calling out the risks and fear we have. And by us, I mean, I'm a technical person, but I think even normal people are kind of afraid and scary, how good this stuff works. I think people like Elon thought that we'd think that they were gods, and some do. Some people do. I think that he's starting to feel a discomfort from logging on only to see us making fun of him and resisting hypercapitalism. People are booing him in public spaces, maybe making him feel a bit self-conscious with all the guillotine memes. I might be naive, but I think I'm also manifesting a good thing. And I struggled with the entire process of this talk, trying to find the balance of warning with hope. I don't often like to end my lectures making everyone feel bad, but it's really hard to see hope in the future of computing when it's been a weapon used to cause so much harm. And honestly, I'm exhausted from witnessing all the bad stuff at such close proximity, working in this industry and using these platforms. It's a big part of why I left Twitter. It's also kind of close to why I've spent the last 4 years thinking well, I pivoted from academia into the industry. Maybe I should do something else. Because all I really want to do, all I really want to use computers for is to hang out with my friends, with my community, express myself with art and humor. It's just not fair that only 20 years ago, I was hopeful about all the concepts in my textbooks. And artificial intelligence was one of those textbooks. What we get is rushed corporate poison-fed white supremacist models. And those white supremacist models are being used to determine if someone incarcerated should get parole or not. I'm a student of prison abolition. I'm on the junior board of the Women's Prison Association, so I pay a lot of attention to how computers are being used to oppress those who are touched by incarceration. The prison industrial complex, especially in the United States, is incredibly unfair, and computers are facilitating that. The same white supremacist models are being used to auto-reject job candidates, which could be you in the future if you don't look the same way or have a name that looks the right way, or you don't use the correct number of keywords in your cover letter. The same models are being used to determine if you can get a loan for your home. So basically deciding if you deserve a roof over your head. Where does it stop? Does it stop when it comes time to tell whether a family gets food assistance or access to clean water as that becomes more scarce? AI, though, is not inherently the problem. It's how we decide to use it. It's supposed to optimize our workflows, not replace humanity and thoughtfulness and tenderness, which is, again, why we need community. It should be for enabling research, bringing creativity to life, maybe whatever the hell this is. I really like how Jeffrey, in his talk yesterday, approached the use of AI in the Potluck project. We just can't allow anyone to use Potluck to organize parole sentencing, please. And I probably could have saved a month of work and used AI to generate all those tables of the last 20 years of history. And I didn't use it because it just didn't occur to me to do so. It's not something I grew up with, like I did spreadsheets. I'm also just not very moved to have my computer do everything for me, which is why I really appreciated kind of in David's Q&A, kind of talking about not having to, have the computer do everything for you. It's just not something I'm compelled to do. I consider myself an artist and a storyteller first, and maybe a computer user fourth or fifth. I turned to spreadsheets because spreadsheets were my earliest aha moment for optimization. And I don't know, when I was kind of coming to that while writing this, I thought that was really super interesting. It made me think there were previous cycles of technology where people felt the same way. There was like the people are like, I didn't know because I just didn't know it was available, or like I'm just not used to it, or people who are vehemently against it. I remember when Wikipedia had come out, which I believe was 2001. Teachers, like, Wikipedia scared the shit out of educators, much like it's scaring the shit out of them with all the AI stuff coming out. The idea of a community maintained encyclopedia as a valid source was like, what are you talking about? That's insane. But like when you think about it now, Wikipedia is so necessary, and not because of corporate stewardship or rule. It's because it's mostly like the community creating it, and that's what I think we need to tap back into if we really want to make a good future for society. I think we need to go back to the basics, like the beginning, where the web was created to share information, not let a select few turn it into a predatory data bank. I think that like with the lessons we've learned from the last 2 decades, hopefully, we are equipped to give people the tools to not only learn and correctly consume the web, but to be able to build it, host it, moderate it, and also make it faster, secure, and I think most importantly, fun. And the primary tool that we can do that with already exists. That's right. I'm not the only one in my 30s that's getting hotter and smarter. We've got HTML. HTML is portable, it's free, it makes the web archivable. No one can acquire it and shut it down. It's fast, it's fun, it's here. I want to give a shout out to platforms like NeoCities, communities like html.energy. I can't not mention all of the incredible creators on Glitch that are expressing themselves and sharing information in less complex ways using HTML as like their main tool. I think that's really exciting. And I know that this is something that a lot of you are longing for, like kind of this return to what brought us onto the web so long ago. I had asked the Fediverse what tech trends they'd like to see come back. And while it all feels nostalgic, it like feels possible. Like 20 years when you think about it is not all that long of a time ago. And I'm not just saying that because my 20-year college anniversary is coming up. I think like the recession that we're heading into now doesn't feel so far from the one in 2008 when I was in grad school. And, you know, I don't have an incredible memory, but I remember hearing the phrase the cloud for the first time. And I'm a visual person. I like looked up at the sky and I pictured like racks of servers and hot air balloons and HP Pavilion entertainment notebooks being carried by storks because that was like the laptop I was using. Like I just vividly remember like just the movement of my head looking up and thinking of that and not really understanding quite what the cloud meant or if that was something that was meant for me. And I think about it today and I'm like, wow, that was only 20 years ago. I like learned so much and I've done so much since then. So while I'm like cautiously hesitant to be excited about the future, like what's the other option? Like pause AI so Elon's army of laborers can catch up? Like hard pass. I don't think we can undo what the last 20 years have done, but we can course correct through all the topics that we've been discussing here at this event, and that's the decentralization of content creation, democratization of hardware, and community and collective action. And the vehicle through which we do that has to be the web. And I know that like some folks might say, just like they did when we kind of went through the like web apps or native apps deal was, well, web-based software can't do everything we need. And that might be true today, but I think that sentiment is a huge part of how we got here. Like, look at how much you can do with the web today that we couldn't do 20 years ago. And that's despite corporations cosplaying as community. Now imagine we put the future of it in control of the community and not corporations. And I'm talking to those of y'all building browsers. I think that's the future of computing. And I think that that is fucking exciting. So I would love for anyone who wants to talk more about like the Fediverse, WebAssembly, edge computing, even Yahoo pipes, I'd love for you to join the conversation on the Fastly community forum. You don't have to be a Fastly customer to use it. This is a place to chat and knowledge share. And if you have any questions, like please, like, or if you want to have conversation about this tonight, I'll be at the social. I'm going to be doing a speed run of some fun art, code, and comedy stuff that I made in order to help me survive the last 20 years of being in this industry. And I'm not on Twitter, but pixel.kitchen is my single person instance. And I will see you all on jennschiffer.com.